morning, good afternoon, and good evening. It is a pleasure to have you with us today. Please welcome as our moderator, Vijay Chaganathan. He's not only a member of the advisory board on zero waste, but also Secretary General of CityNet and a senior fellow at the World Resource Institute, the Ross Center for Sustainable Cities. With over 2 decades of leadership experience at the World Bank and 10 years in the Indian Administrative Service, he brings deep expertise in urban development, and environmental policy. We are delighted to have you today as a visionary guide as we explore zero waste policies and practices alike. The floor is yours. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Flavia, for those kind words, and greetings, everyone. We are coming together on the International Day of Zero Waste to explore how innovative policies and practical initiatives can transform the fashion industry into a truly zero waste sector. Before we dive in, I'd like to share a few housekeeping notes. The session is being held in Microsoft Teams. Please keep your microphone muted unless you're speaking, and use the raise hand feature on the chat window. If you'd like to ask a question, time is about 20 minutes for a live Q&A and attendee sharing. So jot down your thoughts kindly as we go. Pleased to introduce Ms. Teresa Morrison, Waste and Resources Policy Officer innovations designed to incentivize circular practices in the textile and fashion sector. Teresa, over to you, and just a request for all our speakers that schedule stick in your presentation. Thank you. Over to you, Teresa.
Thanks so much, and thank you for the invitation. I hope everyone can hear me well. Let me just quickly share my screen. And please do let me know if you can see this. I switch into slideshow. I reckon everyone can see the slides, otherwise please protest. Yes, so I work with Zero Waste Textiles. I work with the Waste and Resource Policy Officer, and today I want to run you through a couple of the policy levers and give some insights from Europe, where the EU's been pretty busy developing some key policies. But before we think about what should be done, we should think about or give a little framing to the actual problem we would. The zero waste vision for textiles we've identified is that we need a combination of sufficiency and circularity. And I dive a little bit deeper into what that means for us and why we chose those two as the key leading subjects for the textile zero waste vision. So to begin with, we have this massive overall problem with overproduction and overconsumption. I think everyone's familiar. I'm not going to spend too much time on this. You see today system that's commonplace and is externalizing the environmental and social costs of the production and the waste management, and therefore producing a lot of ultra cheap, ultra fast fashion items that are marketed with aggressive advertisements, often online, on social media. There's a lot of gamification in online shops. There's free deliveries, free return. A lot of these developments that we've seen in the past years really driving the overproduction and the way we see. We can't ignore the fact that fossil fuel production, plastic production, and fast fashion go hand in hand. I've put in here a little chart that shows the world production of different fibers, and we see here that the polyester production has overtaken around 2010. So since then, we really have more polyester produced than all the other fibers combined in the system. And the availability of cheap fossil fibers, we won't be seeing the amount of change consumption that we have today, and that's fueling the waste crisis. On a side note, obviously, there's other issues with the waste management, the leakage of microplastics, and so on. This is some interesting insights from Europe, where we've seen in recent years the clothing sales going up while the use time of garments decreasing. So this is really a trend that we ought to tackle with the policies that we introduce. Depressingly, a lot of countries in Europe have invested in collection, sorting, and recycling capacity. But this estimation from the European Commission Research Centre shows that the sorting capacity, even if it's increased between 2019 and 2035, is still not enough to actually deal with all of the human textile waste, because human textile waste is actually put out there, and then the separate collection and sorting capacity not really keeping pace, because we have this estimation of huge growth until 2035. And that's to the next slide, where we see what's happening. Most of the dark blue part is going into incineration and landfilling. Only very little is being recycled or reused in Europe, and about 30% is actually exported. Depressingly, we found these numbers in the same study, and can share the slides afterwards, that there's estimations that by 2035, the amount of textile production reused, because different, so much weight in the system that the reuse and recycling infrastructure obviously identified as a key waste issue, and they have adopted in 2022 the EU strategy for sustainable and circular textiles. And I'll recommend everyone to look at that document, because it's actually quite visionary, and it promises to make fast fashion out of fashion by 2030. And there's a lot of good initiatives in there. As we can say as a civil society representatives, but the question now is how they're going to be implemented. This is obviously in 2022. We've now had elections in the meantime, so we really hope that the initiatives that are put in there, and I go for them in a second, are really actually implemented, and that this issue stays high on the agenda. There's some really important stuff on eco-design for sustainable products. So what are the textiles like that are being put on the market? There are initiatives to tackle greenwashing with the green claims directive, but also textiles labeling regulation. And then on the waste level, we have the waste shipment regulation that's been to introduce extended producer responsibility. It's a very important tool to finance the waste management in Europe. I'll give you a quick overview of our policy recommendations that you can also find on our website and different publications. Essentially, what we think is missing in the current EU strategy is some strong policy lever that really addresses the missing piece, which we identify as the volumes that are being placed on the market. Even if we improve the design of the product, and if we improve the waste management, the overall volumes in the current fashion system is really overflowing the system. So product is always like a step slower than the actual market practices. So this is something that really needs to be addressed. Also within product policy, synthetic fibers need to be addressed due to all of the negative externalities. EPR needs to become a real tool for circularity. Therefore, we need collection targets, recycling, reuse targets, waste prevention targets that are currently not mandatory. But we think it's really important to make sure that EPR is not becoming a fee that producers pay to pollute, where then the waste goes into, for instance, an incinerator. There's also the opportunity placed on the market to just incentivize putting a lot of cheap new items on the market and focusing more on quality. And finally, it's important that we look into exports and we make sure that nothing's exported that is actually a waste, doesn't get reused, and therefore it might make sense to look into the Basel Convention and include new codes for textiles exports, and potentially even a prior make sure that countries that import actually know what they're importing and want to import. That's a brief overview. I'm happy to answer further questions. There's so much to talk about with this topic. That's all for me. Thank you for listening.
Great. Thank you, Teresa, and thank you for sticking to the time. For the clear overview of regulatory levers and policy frameworks. Next, let's all hear San Diego. Laura, we are on the ground seeing textile waste from community repair events to workshops. Laura, over to you.
Can everyone see that okay?
Yes, we can see it. Thank you.
Good morning, esteemed members of the United Nations, distinguished guests, and fellow changemakers. My name is Laura Anthony. I'm the Executive Director and co-founder of Zero Waste San Diego. I'm honored to share the story of how one grassroots initiative is taking on global problems like textile waste, consumer culture, and climate change with a simple but powerful solution: repair. Worldwide, the fashion industry generates over 92 million tons of textile waste every year. In the United States alone, 85% of discarded clothing ends up in landfills or incinerators. That is a garbage truck of textiles wasted every single second. But this is more than an environmental crisis, it's an economic and a social one. Repair is becoming a lost art, and vulnerable communities are paying the highest price. We're here to change that. In 2016, we launched Zero Waste San Diego Fix-It Clinics, free volunteer-led events where people bring broken items, including clothing, and learn to repair them with the help of expert skills sharing events that combine sustainability education, community building, and hands-on empowerment. Over the past 8 years, we've hosted over 300 clinics working in libraries, churches, parks, pubs, community centers, and underserved neighborhoods. We serve everyone: families, seniors, immigrants, veterans, and youth. Textile repair has become one of our most popular offerings. We teach attendees how to patch denim and jackets, replace buttons and zippers, hem pants and skirts, reinforce seams, and repair tears. But the real impact lies in the confidence we build. Participants rediscover the joy of mending and learn skills passed down through generations, often for the first time. One woman told us that she hadn't sewn since her grandmother taught her when she was a child. She left her event with her jacket fixed, her story shared, and her spirits lifted. In the past year alone, over 1,000 people participated in our textile repair activities. More than 2,500 pounds of textiles were diverted from the landfills. 90% of the attendees reported increased confidence in repairing clothing at home. Dozens of youth are now volunteering as peer mentors at our clinics. This is a climate solution, a workforce solution, a community resilience solution. Our work supports multiple sustainable development goals. Goal 12, responsible consumption and production, reducing waste through reuse and repair. Goal 13, climate action, cutting emissions through material conservation. Goal 4, quality education, teaching practical and lifelong skills. Goal 11, sustainable cities and communities, creating connected and resilient neighborhoods. Repair is scalable, reproducible, and equitable. It belongs in every circular economy policy and every climate adaptation plan. San Diego Fix-It Clinic can happen anywhere. All you need is a table, tools, a coach, and a willing community. Today, I invite you to fund repair initiatives that blend education, sustainability, and equity. Incorporate repair into national and local climate strategies. Empower youth and the elders to become teachers of tradition and repair culture. Because when we repair the things we own, we also repair our relationship with the planet and with each other. Thank you and happy Earth Day.
Thank you, Laura. That was truly inspiring. Repair and reuse initiatives really demonstrate the power of local hands-on action and have huge consequences for our cities of the global south, where there's a lot of talent to do exactly this kind of a thing. Now, let me next turn to Ms. Anne Scheinberg, chair of the ISWA's, that is the International Solid Waste Association's Working Group on Recycling and Waste Minimization, second-hand and vintage clothing trade, and will unpack the nuances between reuse and disposable of global textile flows. And the floor is yours. Anne, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Please go ahead.
Yes, I am trying to share my screen. It doesn't seem to be working very well. And I only see Teresa. So maybe, Teresa, you can turn your camera off because you're not on my screen. Yeah, thank you. Now maybe we'll work to share my screen. I will give it one opportunity. And are you seeing my screen now?
Yes, we are seeing it now.
Okay, great. I decided to use the 5 minutes to untangle two of my favorite concepts about the service chain, which is about managing waste, and the value chain, which is about managing materials. Here we go. So these are a few slides about these two different landscapes. And in the context of the fact that presentations such as the one by Zero Waste Europe tend to mix these up in a quite problematic way. So we have on the one hand the institutions of government, the globalized institutions and government. You have secondhand sales that benefit the economy, the environment, and buyers. And you have a whole set of stakeholders who are doing business by reclaiming materials. Then you have the service chain. That's where the zero waste comes in. It's trying to minimize the role of the public works. And these are the activities that you expect to see on the public sector service chain side. This is a national or a local landscape, generally publicly financed and legislated, and is involved with management and with waste. They're different and standards. And one of the problems that I have as an imported European, I spent the first 30 years of my career in North America and the second almost 30, maybe 20 in Europe, is that these look very different in Europe and in North America. But so I have taken this idea, working with some partners in ISWA and outside. We tried to look at how this works in the clothing sector. On the service chain side in Europe, there is usually some form of collection of clothing, and then maybe it's graded or sorted and shredded. You can see over here, it's baled. It often goes to an incinerator or a landfill. And unless it's donated, it ends up generally in an incinerator or disposal. There are also charity systems that grade, sort, bale, and they put the, they are sometimes exporting to other countries. In those other countries, there's a very complicated distribution chain. which this is a Tanzania example. Starts with the Mitumbas who have imported the containers, and the clothing goes to street sellers, daily markets, weekly markets. Some of it goes to villages, very small places where my colleague from Tanzania says they'll buy anything. And some of it ends up in local dumping. And I'm not actually talking a lot about solutions, but I wanted to close by talking about what words belong to these landscapes, so that if you find yourself talking about the words on the left hand in pink, manage, waste, even zero waste, sort, dump, regulate, and be safe, dispose, transport, have a route. You're in the service chain. And on the right side, if you find yourself talking about secondhand, size, color, age of the items that you're trading, market, fashion, market specification, wedding dresses, tailors, mending, or smell, or sometimes safe, you're on the value chain side. And as a one of the reasons that I talk about these things in a presentation, and I'm going to finish in 1 minute, VJ, is that the European Union has really got these things badly confused. And the way that Europe has organized extended producer responsibility, as Laura also said, is they've given all the responsibility, but also all the rights to the producers. And the producers are not interested in a secondary value chain. They want to make their clothes, have people dispose of their clothes and be able to sell more. So if we want to get ourselves out of a situation where clothes are disposed of either here or after they've been exported and used elsewhere, I really think we have to get the producers out of the decision-making chain. It's an unpopular view, but I am a very big EPR pessimist. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. This is quite a profound distinction you've made, and I think that there would be some interesting questions on it between the service chain and the value chain context. I hope we'll have some time to discuss it in the Q&A. Now, let me turn to our fourth spotlight, and the speaker is going to be Mr. Yu-Chuan Huang, founder of the United Wardrobe Project, who will present a concrete example of a circular business model that turns unwanted garments into new value streams. Perhaps this is a nice lead on to what you said, Anne. Over to you, Yu-Chuan. Please share your good practice on how you can actually operationalize the value chain concept. Thank you.
Hello. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can. Please go ahead.
Yes. Hello. My name is Yu-Chuan Huang from Bangkok Partner School in Thailand, and I'm the founder of United Wardrobe Project, which is a project turning fashion waste into an action. So the first start of my project has been from wardrobe simply. I just woke up and I saw too many clothing that no longer fits me or appeal to me anymore, and I was thinking, how should I like utilize this clothes into a good cause and not make any waste anymore? So that's why I became to research about this project, about these issues, and I found out that a truckload of clothing are dumped every second, and 92 million tons of textile waste is equivalent to these waste. Yeah, and in order to combat fast fashion and promote our circular economy, and as a student in Thailand, one thing that came into my mind was Koreans Korea's policy of donation and in terms of clothing and textile waste. And therefore, inspired by those boxes, I was thinking to install a permanent donation boxes into school so parents and students can donate more conveniently and make it into a habit, and which leads to reducing textile waste, less burden for parents dealing with those waste, and also supporting the UN SDG and helping the sustainable future for everyone. So the reason why I chose United Wardrobe Box rather than other channels was in to have an eye-catching donation box in front of school and at the exit of school, so people get constant visual reminder to act on it and have a go at the donation. And this really simplified their steps, so people don't have to wait until a donation drive comes to school until like, for example, Christmas or summer holiday. And this turned our school into a vibrant hub of giving and compassion. As you guys will all know, our project aligns with many sustainable development goals, such as number 1, no poverty, number 10, reduce inequality, and number 12, responsible consumption and production. And as I've attached in the presentation, there's many more that still aligns with my project. This is a photo taken in October 31st, 20 steel material from a pipe and back of our school. And box here is also from the seal, and this was installed in front of the reception, so people who is entering the school can donate at the same time. These are the video of us working towards our project, collecting, moving, sorting, and packaging, and delivering them. And we do this in a community organization around Bangkok. As you can see here, these are the footage of us working, and the sheer amount of boxes can clearly show our compassion to this project. This is us in the school laundry room. We go here every break time or lunchtime, making a rotation team so our clothes can overfill. And here we are packaging our clothing to near the city of Bangkok. And of course, I want to say a huge thank you to my amazing team who's not here today, but their dedication made everything possible, and this would not have been done. And I want to say youth movement is just teamwork, and youth movement is very essential. In order to quantify our impact, we also did environmental impact report, which is through our many sources such as Google and many other research papers, and we found out that we save about 120,000 kilograms of carbon dioxide and over 45 million liters of water. And we have opened a thrift shop in order to raise funds to buy children a unrecyclable material such as underwear and sanitary pads, and this has that's neat. So just like UN does, we thought inspiring the youth and teaching them was also important. So we visited year 5 and year 6 students to teach about this project. And for our expansion, we have gone to many schools in Bangkok, such as Wells, ICS, and KISRP. And we also expanded to different provinces, which is Hua Hin International School. And these are our work being featured in our school magazine. And as I'm here, of course, I really love to speak, and I speak in many events such as Service Conference with VCA, and also we have learned a lot through our visit to UNESCAP through our invitation. And thankfully, I was chosen to be the top 3 good practice out of 220 submissions by UNEP and UN Habitat, and it's grateful to be here as well. And as a good practice in UN Habitat's website. And I would like to say thank you for this opportunity, letting me speak today. And the last remark I want to say is that everyone in the world now knows the problem about climate change, and we all know what to do to help these problems. So I think one thing we should do is take action today and trying to do small things that's going to lead to a bigger change, just like the action I made. And thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, Chan. That was truly inspiring. And what I like best about it is that this was a good follow-on to the distinction Anne had made between service chain, value chain. You show us how it can be done in practice, and most of all, to involve young people who are obviously key to that area of activity. Now, finally, I have the pleasure of introducing Mr. Richard Anthony, Chair of the Zero Waste International Alliance, or ZWIA, I think as it's called, who will guide us through key networks and resources that can help scale zero waste fashion initiatives worldwide. Richard, we look forward to your insights.
All right. Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here. We are here. We've been around here for 25 years, organizing at the grassroots level for zero waste. Our first meeting was in Brighton Beach, England, after a group of us went to Davos to speak at the World Resource Forum on zero waste. Had a full house, and it was the next day was a meeting chaired by Dr. Robin Murray, who wrote the book on zero. The meetings were in Penang, Malaysia, by the Global Anti-Incineration Alliance. We brought a lot of people together to talk about what the goal will be. During that event, the U.S. attacked Iraq, and we all had to decide why we were there, and we all decided we were all there for the children, and that the goal would be waste. We now have, since that time, we now have 12 national affiliates, which basically, I'm sorry, we've had 12 international dialogues from that we've met throughout the world since that time. We met in Wales and Davos, twice in the Philippines, twice in San Francisco, Naples, Italy, Florianopolis, Brazil, Canada, and San Jose, Costa Rica. And each of these went together, organized locally. We started to talk to stakeholders about zero waste and how they get there, around the definition and zero waste and the highest and best use and our consensus policy. First slide shows us the first slide shows you. I'm not going to do it. You're going to do it, Flavia. There you go. That's the all the different organizations that you can tie into working on zero waste. The zero waste definition has been the peer-reviewed and forms the basis of the ZWIA affiliation. The zero waste definition is the responsible production, consumption, and recovery and reuse of products, packages, and materials without burning, and no discards to air, water, and land that affect human health and the environment. We now have 12 national affiliates who are certifying governments and businesses for zero waste practices using these ZWIA standards that we've all agreed on, peer-reviewed internationally. And we also have now 62 organizational affiliates that are organized again on the definition and are working towards zero waste in their communities, trying to get this to happen in a reasonable manner. We are appreciative of the First Lady of Turkey opening up a United Nations event on zero waste initiatives and the UN International Day to be held annually on March 30th. This was a very big boost to our grassroots movement, and I was honored to speak at the UN General Assembly with half a dozen other experts about ZWIA and how we can get there. Here's a slide showing the next slide showing our different policies and programs. The ZWIA currently is working on goals and community organization. And the last slide shows that our information, Zero Waste International Alliance, have a website And we have a listserv. You can go to zwia.org and pick up a lot of this information I gave today and how to get involved. I appreciate the opportunity to speak. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Richard, for that excellent summary of the great work you're doing. And thank you for all our speakers for sticking within your time limit. We're exactly on schedule with 20 minutes left for a Q&A. So let me start by the first question, which has come in the chat box from Garima Kaushik. And I think this is directed towards you, Teresa. Could you please explain how EPR was implemented for the textile waste? And I would also be interested to hear your reaction to what Anne was saying about the distinction between the service chain and the value chain. Over to you.
Yes, thank you. And thanks for the question. I couldn't catch the name where that came from. Perhaps first on how EPR was implemented for textiles. So in fact, it hasn't been fully implemented for textiles across the year. Implemented as a one for 5 years, and it's been introduced in the Netherlands, but it's quite a new law since last year. And the EU member states have now agreed to all implement EPR for textiles in the coming years. So we probably see those legislations being rolled out across the EU by 2027, 2028, depending on how fast they are, and then really take up. So the best reference you have is France, really, where EPR has been in place for a number of years. And well, I can really also understand Anne's frustration with EPR to an extent, where if we look at the EPR in France for textiles, there's a couple of good provisions in the law. For instance, they do have targets for reuse, for local reuse, and so on. So build up the infrastructure. You just have to do collection for the infrastructure. Helps in a way, but has had no effect at all on waste prevention in France. So if we look at the waste generation of textile waste in France, it's been on the rise, even despite EPR being introduced. In France, there's a fund for repairs. The producers have to allocate in their producer responsibility organization, allocate a certain amount of money for repair and reuse in France. It's kind of, so there's some room for improvement, let's say. So ideally, there should be a bigger fund for reuse and repair. And crucially, we need some overarching legislation in the EU on how garments are produced, the quality standards. We need to address the dominance of polyester, and we need to introduce some legislation on waste prevention, which so far has really not been sufficient, despite the EPR. And unfortunately, we don't really see that happening at the moment. So I like to be a little bit cautious as to what EPR can do. Maybe one last thing on the differentiation that Anne made between the value chain and the service chain. You said there that the service chain, the waste management chain, mainly is funded by public money, and I think that's really the problem, that taxpayers' money essentially in municipalities has to pay for the collection of waste that's produced, that's not recyclable, that doesn't have any value because of the way it's produced, the way it's marketed. And therefore, we think it's key that we hold producers accountable and that they are also financially liable for the infrastructure of the recycling and the collection of this waste, while also limiting their power. I see a problem that in the EPR schemes, producers are too powerful and there's not enough stakeholder engagement from other stakeholders. I hope that answered the question. It's a lot of different topics combined, but I try to address everything.
Thank you very much. Now, I had a question for both Anne and Yuchan. maybe I can ask both of you to kindly respond to it. Now, and your point about the value chain, of course, one of the big challenges is that the persons who can make the difference, like those who can repair or, make sure that the garments are reusable, are sometimes often very poor and don't have the necessary ecosystem to support them. So my question is, do you see any opportunities with the digital ecosystem coming in of setting up what you might think of as a separate kind of digital value chain, which can help us track exactly how these garments can be used from reused? And the related question to you, Yu-chan, is that what has been the reaction when you go from these schools, which obviously where the rich kids are going, to some of the typical public schools? Do you see the same level of enthusiasm with your idea? So over to you, Anne.
Okay, I don't know if you can see me. I'm having difficulty with the interface.
We can see you.
But okay, good. I can't see myself. I would say there's two separate questions. One is, in answer to the first part of your question, you don't actually have to invent the value chain or even the waste prevention cascades. They mostly exist, particularly in cities. And I'm talking about my favorite circularity enterprises like the shoemaker and the tailor and the bicycle rental and the wedding clothes rental. One of the problems is that we have this idea that the government has to reinvent all of these circular processes. And in fact, what the government usually can do is help them get permitted, help them get access to clients, and avoid that they get pushed out of the neighborhoods that they're in terms of digital platforms, I don't know if any of there's been an explosion of digital platforms for tracking quantities that are sold to the value chains. One of the ones that I know the most about is Brazilian. It's called BV. And it's a system of giving diversion credits to informal recyclers. I don't think it's being used for textiles, but it could be. The way digital platforms in our sector virtually always work is that they track the amount or the kilos or the number of items that are sold to a buyer, to the value chains. And sometimes they give an extra payment, like in Colombia, recyclers get an extra payment from the government for the service of doing the recycling. So digital platforms are very useful. Not all, they don't usually have a relationship to formal businesses that repair things. But they do have a relationship to buyers of recyclables and buyers of textiles. And while we're on the topic, I will say that the European Union is in a process of criminalizing the secondhand clothing sector. Basically, it used to be that you could donate your clothing to a container that belonged to the Red Cross or the Salvation Army or the British Heart Fund, and they would take that clothing and grade it and sort it and put it in their shops, and other people can buy it. I'll ask Teresa to talk a little bit more about this, but what I understand is at the moment, that process is becoming illegal. And before the clothing and the container can get to the shop, the owner of the container has to prove that it's not waste under the European end of waste provisions. And I'm working on a textile group at the International Solid Waste Association. And the information that we have is that this is basically causing the collapse of the secondhand charity clothing sector in Europe. And so this is a very pessimistic moment to ask about that particular value chain in Europe. In that sense, I think that the way that North American counties and cities and states support their reuse sector, often with diversion credits, is a more robust way of intervening with policy. I think that's about all I can say to contribute to this. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. That was very helpful. Now let me turn to you, Chan, for his reactions to my question. And also, I think it's related to what Anne was saying, because you're also be one of essentially contributions that are being made by the well-to-do in Thailand for the recycling part. So over to you, Yuchan.
Oh, so let me clarify if I understood the question. So you're talking about like how my work is like would be universally like applicable or something like that. I didn't quite
Right,
understand
exactly.
the question.
That's my question. How far have
Oh.
you been able to socialize it to other sections of society, like to, a typical public school?
Oh, so far we collaborated with many international school in Thailand and especially and we expanded to other provinces, and we had through many conferences I visited, there's many attention from other countries. And one school in Malaysia actually used our model as a like a case study for their curriculum to exemplify the good practices around the world. And yes, also we've expanded to 2 schools in India. And I am not entirely sure, as my teammate is in charge of the school. Like we are totally applicable to other public school in the area, and we've also trying to collaborate with many other areas in Bangkok that is not international, and we have been requesting the UN Thailand for such help, and I'm sure we can work on it someday and have a bigger impact, and that's my hope.
Thank you. And Teresa, can I ask you to respond to, I think, the question which Anne had raised?
Sorry, could you repeat the question for me?
Yeah, could I request you to respond to the concern that Anne had raised about the new regulations in Europe, which is sort of criminalizing the donation of garments to charities?
I'm not entirely sure what regulation Anne was referring to. I'm not aware of any such regulation that would criminalize donation to charities. There is some more strict provisions for the export of, it's not implemented yet, but the Waste Framework Directive, that's the law that's been revised recently, foresees that there must be proof of prior sorting before exporting of used garments. That's been introduced a couple of ways being exported in the global south in different recipient countries such as Ghana, but also Asian countries or Chile. So this is something of that debate. It doesn't forbid the export of used garments. It just requires prior sorting by the exporters. I'm aware. On the crisis of the European reuse operators, I'm aware of that, and I'm happy to. I can only replicate the information I receive from social enterprises that work on reuse, who've been. The market in Europe is essentially saturated. They're receiving a lot of very low quality garments in their collection that no one wants to buy, such as I don't know, a Shein top that and no one wants to buy this in a charity shop, of course. This is a problem, and also the crisis of exporting. And as far as I'm aware, that's more to do with the price of the exported good going down instead of and the new provision. But I would have to dig deep into this. I'm happy to share in the chat some of the resources that I know, but perhaps Anne wants to clarify. See your hand is up.
Over to you, Anne.
Yes. What I understand is that also charity shops working in Europe have to prove that what is in the container is not waste, thus meets the end of waste criteria before they can put it in their shops. And what I'd like to say is that at the International Solid Waste Association, my work group has a project where we're working with some clothing traders and some researchers in Africa and a number of other stakeholders on tools for making export and trading more transparent. So some form of fair trade for secondhand clothing. And we're having a conference about this at the IFAT Trade Fair in Istanbul on the 15th and 16th of May, so in 3 weeks. The IFAT is an open trade fair. The conference is free. So if you want to hear more about this, that's a little advertisement for it. And yes, there's been an earthquake in Istanbul, but we had contact today, and it seems like it's not so bad as the press is saying, and the conference is going forward.
Okay, thank you, Anne. Now here's a question in the chat box for Laura. What can be done about encouraging businesses to promote more home compostable garments? There's a very good bra-making bras that at the end of their life fully break down in one's home composter. As a clear opposite, elegant evening gowns are mostly made of synthetics and worn at most a couple of times. How can it be made easier for consumers? How can it? This is in response to the comment that mentioned that EPRs have not created the intended reduction in textile waste. Would a focus on home composting, community composting address the issue of increasing textile waste? Over to you, Laura.
With any changes needs to be regulations and trying to encourage manufacturers to create incentives for manufacturers to produce materials that can be composted at home, prepared and composted. It also takes a lot of education and to the community regarding purchasing these items, and it has to be readily available and convenient. So in any kind of program, accessibility and convenience, and of course price is the big contributor. I do believe education on why polyester and purchasing natural fiber is important, because I think that is education. People don't know that actual like polyester is plastic. And also it needs to be people in the community to move this forward.
Thank you, Laura. And I guess we are sort of reaching near the end of the time, but I have a final question for Richard. How can an organization affiliate with ZWIA?
All right, thank you for that. It's very easy. Go to our website, zwia.org, and put in an inquiry that you want to be an affiliate. Now, the key for affiliation is usually just that you adopt the definition, and that's what you organize around. If you want to be a national affiliate, we want you to be a qualified charity with a board of directors, etc. But it's easy too. They range from Nepal to Uruguay. We've got a lot of organizations, and we're trying to keep people on the same focus. So ZWIA for get on the website, then ask us to be affiliated. I'll flip you over to Ruth Abbey, who's our affiliation chair, and we'll get you going. And we appreciate it.
Now, Richard, do you have any sort of basic e-learning courses or something on the web so that people can be made aware of the kind of distinctions that Laura was referring to?
Oh, that was a great question. Yes, absolutely. We've created a introduction to zero waste education program. It's a 4-hour lecture engaging you in it. And then those people who are inspired, there's a 3-day series of course where you actually learn the tools on how to evaluate what's happening in your community. Plus, there's now an advanced course for those people who are on this website, like Marianne and Heather, that actually work together to come up with how we're going to move forward on the international basis.
That's wonderful, because I think for networks like ours, CityNet, we have more than 160 mayors and in Asia Pacific. Some of the sort of basic building blocks are not known, as Laura was mentioning. It would make a huge difference if you could just share these with us. We can put it on our website. We have an SDG platform, and a lot of people in our cities look at that, and they can certainly take advantage of it. There's a lot happening on the plastic side, but not much on the textiles. So thank you. That was very helpful. Now, I think we've neared the end of the time. We are reaching exactly 1 hour. So on behalf of all of us in the Zero Waste Advisory Committee, I would like to thank the speakers today. A heartfelt thanks for the wonderful presentations you gave. And most of all, everyone's taking your time, which I know is very challenging. In 5 minutes, all the knowledge you have to pack it in was truly inspiring to me. And we hope today's conversation inspires all of us here to take concrete steps towards a circular, waste-free fashion industry in your community. So with that, thank you and have a wonderful day.
4. And the answer is 0. Thank you.
Terrific. Thank you again.
Thank you
and
so
over
much.
to you, Flavia.
Wait.
Thank you so much, everyone. Have a lovely day, night, morning.
Bye-bye.
All right.